I recently purchased this giant Revolt gravel bike, but with winter fast approaching, I'd feel a lot safer with a pair of Continental top contact tyres fitted. Before anything, we need to know what size the tyres are on the bike. So let's bring the bike in, and there it is, a giant Revolt. So we need to know what size these tyres are. So we'll have a quick look. At a quick glance, they seem to be 700 by 35C. So that's our starting point now. So let's have a look what tyres were fit on that. So taking a closer look at this, we can see 700 by 35C there. And here, the important numbers are 35-622. So what do these numbers mean exactly? 700 by 35C is the French system and means the tyre has a 700mm outside diameter and 35mm tyre width. 35-622 is ETRTO, or European Tyre and Rim Technical Organisation, and means a 35mm tyre width with a 622mm bead seat diameter. And if you're wondering what the C means, it means 622 under the French system. All quite confusing. So hopefully some photographs to explain this. This is the European system with a 622mm bead seat diameter. And here's the French system, which is the outside diameter of 700mm. And the tyre width is 35mm in both cases. So basically, other than your new tyres and maybe some inner tubes, you'll need just the following to change those tyres: a set of tyre levers, a pump, possibly some spanners if your wheel is bolted on with a couple of nuts, and the tyres I am fitting are the Continental Top Contact 2, which have a handmade price of £60 each. Ouch. So here I have my new Continental Top Contact 2 tyres with their sides on. So if we just open these up and show you how they come, because these have got a flexible bead, so that means they can be folded up like so, whereas some have a steel band which can't be folded. So that's the tyres. It's worth changing the inner tubes as well, and these inner tubes can go from 32mm to 47mm, and they're the pressed valve type. So you do need to make sure that the inner tube will actually expand large enough if you're putting bigger tyres on. And we need some tyre levers such as these, and of course our trusty old pump. Let's start by removing the front tyre. So this bike has the quick release type of fixing, so you may need spanners at this point, but in this case it's just a case of pull the lever, undo the nut on the other side, and the wheel should just drop down like so. So we'll take this to the bench. So the first thing to do is let the air out of the inner tube, and on the pressed valve you just undo the top and push it in like so. So with the air out, we can now break the bead away from the wheel like so. Just go around and push and pull so that the bead is away. We can now get our tyre levers. There's one in there. Hook it onto the spoke. You might need a couple to do this. I'm going to use all three just to show how it works. And you should be able to just use one of the tyre levers inside like so and just push it around to remove one side of the tyre like so. So we need to undo the little nut that secures the pressed valve in position, and then pull the tyre back slightly so that we can get to the inner tube. Now the inner tube may be stuck on the inside of the tyre casing, and this one was as well, so you might need to give it a bit of a tug to get it out. And then we can just push the tyre down and pull the pressure valve out of the wheel like so. So that's the inner tube now out, and the tyre should just peel off quite easily. And we can put that to one side. Now we do need to check this band. It's like a tape band, because that ensures that the inner tube doesn't get punctured if the heads of the spokes were there. So make sure that's all complete and not damaged. The Continental tyres that I'm going to fit have a directional arrow on. So to make life a bit simpler, I'm just going to mark an arrow on the rim so I know exactly which way the wheel rotates. And this way I can make sure the tyre goes on the correct way round. So some tyres can be fitted either way, but on these particular Continental tyres there is actually a direction rotational arrow, and I'll highlight that in red. So we do need to make sure this tyre is fitted the right way round. Time to fit that new tyre. And here's the new tyres that I'll be fitting. These are handmade Continentals with some puncture protection already built in. So we can take our tyre out of the box and start to unwrap it, which are a bit fiddly because it's all flat. So we need to make it look like a tyre again. And then I need to find that directional arrow, make sure I've got it right, turn it over. Yeah, I can see the arrow. So we can then start by putting one side of the tyre over the rim, like so, and then just gently push it over until it's seated all the way round. I'm going to line up those arrows as well. So we just need to now put the inner tube in. So I'm going to put a nice new inner tube in. Again, this is Continental, so it's a branded make. So unravel that. It helps if you pop a little bit of air in there, just to give the inner tube some body, as it were. So you don't want a lot of air, just enough to inflate it to a basic shape of an inner tube, like so. So we should better lay that inside now. So make sure you line it up with the hole in the rim of the wheel. Just take that little nut off or drop it off. So we just need to poke it through the hole. Yes, go on, poke it through. It's funny how you delay things when you're making a video. So there we go, we've just dropped that in, and now we've just got to close the tyre back up. Being careful that we don't pinch the inner tube, because obviously if we pinched it, we might put a hole in it. So you do have to be somewhat careful here. Just try and tuck that inner tube back in there. It's better if you can do it without using tyre levers, because tyre levers, you do run the risk of pinching the inner tube as you get it in. But it will get very tight. So I'm going to use a tyre lever here just to nudge it in, and then hopefully I can work the rest over like so. There we go. It's popped on nicely. So I'm just going to flex the tyre backwards and forwards to make sure that the inner tube is nicely seated in there and that it's not caught or anything. Again, I'm going to put a bit more air in now. I'm just going to check it again, make sure that the tyre is sitting nicely on its beading, and again that nothing is trapped. I can pop the little nuts back on there, spin that down a bit. I'm not going to put it all the way in because I've got to pump the air up yet, so I'm going to take it up to full pressure now. And I think it can take 85 psi, but I'll take it up to about 60 initially. So we should be, what are we up to now? About 60 there. And see what that looks like. And then we can spin that nut down, tighten the valve, and put the little yellow dust cap back on. And we can put the wheel back on the bike now. So I can offer the wheel now up to the cycle forks and just slot the disc into the caliper and then tighten that left hand nut, and then I've just got to push my lever down. Not too much pressure, just enough to make sure it's tight and in there. That's it. Give it a spin. Seems to be spinning smoothly. Just check my arrow again. So there's my arrow, and there's where it says rotation direction. So onto the back wheel now. So moving on to the rear tyre. So as I previously mentioned, these Continental top contact tyres do have a directional indicator on them. So before I do anything, I'm just going to mark this wheel rim with an arrow so I know that the tyre is going to go on the correct way round. Sometimes it makes life easier if you actually deflate the tyre on a rear wheel before removing it, because we have to push the whole wheel forwards to release it. So by letting the tyre down, it just gives you a bit more space. And while I'm at it, because I can just rotate the wheel on the bike stand, I'll break all the beading now, which will make taking the tyre off easier. Let's remove the rear wheel. So I'll show a couple of camera angles here. So on this one it's quick release again. So it's pull the lever, undo the nut on the other side, push the wheel slightly forwards and then drop the wheel down and then lift the chain off, like so. Now to remove the inner tube and the old tyre. So with our wheel on the bench, we'll just undo this little nut there that holds the pressure valve securely in position. So using our tyre levers as we did for the front wheel, just poke them under, careful not to pinch the inner tube, even though it's the old one and I'm changing it, it's still useful as a spare. So still try not to pinch that inner tube. So I'm going to use 3 tyre levers again just to show. So it came off quite simple, that. And then just spin it around so that the bead comes off the rim, and then pull your inner tube out like so, and then just push your tyre to one side and pull the pressure valve out. So that's our inner tube out, discard that, and then obviously the tyre just pulls off the rim, as easy as that. So we're going to check the tape again. Although these spoke heads are actually sunk into the wheel itself, it's still worth checking the tape because it's the right thing to do. So let's get our new tyre out. And we do need a pair of scissors just to cut the tape band that's around that. Obviously being very careful not to actually cut the tyre. That would be a disaster at £60 each. Now to fit that new handmade tyre. So let's take our folded handmade tyre and try and unwind it so it looks like a tyre. It's more like a curly-whirly at the moment. So it is quite fiddly. Being that these are like flexible tyres. So anyway, so get the one side onto the rim like we have. It popped on there, which is good. And now for the inner tube. So unfold that. Don't forget to take that nut off, otherwise you won't be able to get it back into the wheel rim. So now we'll pop a bit of air in there, so that it inflates to look like an inner tube, and that will make it easier and hopefully save us from pinching the inner tube when we try and get this tyre on. Now my valve stems are 60mm, which is far too long for this. They only needed to be 40mm really. Look, that's clearly too long. But I managed to get them off eBay quite cheap, because again, inner tubes seem to be quite expensive now. So anyway, I digress. Let's get this other side of the tyre on now. Just push it down, work it around carefully, making sure we don't pinch the inner tube. You sort of need 3 hands at this point. 2 hands on the tyre and a third hand to push the inner tube in. But it sort of gets in there. That wasn't me, that was the tyre. Trust me, I'd have edited it out. Right, and the tyre should just squeeze over there. Give it a push, there we go. So I'm now going to just check my arrows are still pointing in the right direction, and give the tyre a bit of a massage to make sure that nothing's pinching and that everything is on the rim correctly. I'm just poking up the stem there, make sure that's not trapped or anything. And so I'm going to put some air in. That will push the stem out once I start inflating the inner tube. So a bit of exercise there. And it's looking good. So I think I'm quite happy with that. So I can finish inflating the tyre. I think these can go to 85 psi. I'll take them to 60 for the moment. So we need to obviously put our little nut on now onto my extremely long valve stem. That is a very long valve stem. So what I'll do now is give it the final pump. I'm just checking what the maximum PSI is. So I'm going to take that up to 60 PSI. And if you look on the tyre, it is a little bit blurred here, but you can just make out 85 psi 6 bar, which is the maximum pressure. You just need to seal your valve then and put your dust cap back on, and then we can put it back on the bike. Time to put the completed wheel back onto the bike. Sometimes it can be easier to put the rear wheel back on with the bike actually upside down, but obviously you need to protect your handlebars and your seat from getting scraped. So basically we've got to put the sprocket inside the chain and lower the wheel back down like so. I'm just going to turn the crank for the derailleur to find its position, and then it's a case of just retightening the left hand nut and pushing the locking lever back down like so, and that looks okay, and it seems to be spinning okay. Might take a quick look at the 2 different treads side by side for comparison. So here's the 2 tyres side by side, with the old one on the left and the new one on the right, and hopefully that Continental top contact tyre will keep me from slipping off come winter. So without further ado, let's get this bike on the road. Thank you for watching. He nearly had me. Whew. Let's get that camera back. And here's some photographs of the Continental Top Contact 2 tyres, which are handmade in Germany. Thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe.